Hey crew, it's Pitt and I am back with some more Esoterica. We are continuing our exploration of the secret teachings of all ages by Mr. Manly Hall. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various topics that are brought to light. I do have a little bit more understanding than some other people, and so I am expounding upon the things in which I know. I try to avoid the ones that I don't, but we are going through the entirety of the topic regardless. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time you get lost in the terminology and you don't know what I'm talking about, there are several playlists linked up here and in the box down below along with the source material so that you can understand where I'm coming from. We're going to hit one more time because we are again dealing with the Rosicrucians. I do not believe that these secret societies, the Rosicrucians or the Freemasons, are a nefarious group. If you believe that and you are going to be mad about that, be blessed elsewhere. We are discussing the actual things that are actually on record about the people, and we're going to talk about the various topics that are brought to light. With all that being said, we are going to dive in and begin our exploration of the Rosicrucian doctrines and tenets. Trustworthy information is unavailable concerning the actual philosophical beliefs, political aspirations, and humanitarian activities of the Rosicrucian fraternity. Today, as of old, the mysteries of this society are preserved inviolate by virtue of their essential nature, and attempts to interpret Rosicrucian philosophy are but speculations, anything to the contrary notwithstanding. Evidence points to the probable existence of two distinct Rosicrucian bodies, an inner organization whose members never reveal their identity or teachings to the world, and an outer body under the supervision of the inner group. In all probability, the symbolic tomb of Christian Rosicrucians, Knight of the Golden Stone, was in reality this outer body, the spirit of which is in a more exalted sphere. For a period of more than a century subsequent to 1614, the outer body circulated tracts and manifestos either under either its own name or the names of various initiated members. The purpose of these writings was apparently to confuse and mislead investigators, and thus, effectively, to conceal the actual designs of the fraternity. When Rosicrucianism became the philosophical fad of the 17th century, numerous documents on the subject were also circulated for purely commercial purposes by impostors desirous of capitalizing its popularity. The cunningly contrived artifices of the fraternity itself and the blundering literary impostures of charlatans formed a double veil behind which the inner organization carried on its activities in a manner totally dissimilar to its purposes and principles as publicly disseminated. The Fratres Rosicrucis naively referred to the misunderstandings which they have for obvious reason permitted to exist concerning themselves as being clouds within which they labor and behind which they are concealed. An inkling of the substance of Rosicrucianism, its esoteric doctrines, can be gleaned from an analysis of its shadow, its exoteric writings. In one of the most important of their clouds, the Confessio Fraternatis, the brethren of the fraternity of R.C. seeks to justify their existence and explain the purposes and activities of their order. In its original form, the Confessio is divided into 14 chapters, which are here epitomized. Confessio Fraternatis R.C. ad eruditos Europae. Chapter 1. Do not, through hasty judgment or prejudice, misinterpret the statements concerning our fraternity published in our previous manifesto, the Fama Fraternatis. Jehovah, beholding the decadence of civilization, seeks to redeem humanity by revealing to the willing, and by thrusting upon the reluctant, those secrets which previously he had reserved for his elect. By his wisdom the godly shall be saved, but the sorrows of the ungodly shall be multiplied. While the true purpose of our order was set forth in the Fama Fraternatis, misunderstandings have arisen through which we have been falsely accused of heresy and treason. In this document, we hope to clarify our position that the learned of Europe will be moved to join with us in the dissemination of divine knowledge according to the will of our illustrious founder. Chapter 2. While it is alleged that by many that the philosophic side, sic JDH, of our day is sound, we declare it to be false and soon to die of its own inherent weakness. Just as nature, however, provides a remedy for each new disease that manifests itself, so our fraternity has provided a remedy for the infirmities of the world's philosophic system. The secret philosophy of the RC is founded upon that knowledge which is the sum and head of all faculties, sciences, and arts. By our divinely revealed system, which partakes much of theology and medicine but little of jurisprudence, we analyze the heavens and the earth, but mostly we study man himself, within whose nature is concealed the supreme secret. If the learned of our day will accept our invitation and join themselves to our fraternity, we will reveal to them undreamed of secrets and wonders concerning the hidden workings of nature. Chapter 3. Do not believe that the secrets discussed in this brief document are lightly esteemed by us. We cannot describe fully the marvels of our fraternity, lest the uninformed be overwhelmed by our astonishing declarations, and the vulgar ridicule the mysteries which they do not comprehend. We also fear that many will be confused by the unexpected generosity of our proclamation. For not understanding the wonders of this sixth age, they do not realize the great changes which are to come. There's a lot of typos in this one. Like blind men living in a world full of light, they discern only through the sense of feeling. By sight is implied spiritual cognition, by feeling the material senses. Chapter 4. We firmly believe that through deep meditation on the inventions of the human mind and the mysteries of life, through the cooperation of the angels and spirits, and through experience with and long observation, our loving Father, CRC, was so fully illumined with God's wisdom that were all the books and writings of the world lost and the foundations of science overturned, the fraternity of RC could reestablish the structure of world thought upon the foundation of divine truth and integrity. Because of the great depth and perfection of our knowledge, those desiring to understand the mysteries of the fraternity of RC cannot attain to that wisdom immediately, but must grow in understanding and knowledge. Therefore, our fraternity is divided into grades, through which each must ascend step by step to the great arcanum. Now that it has pleased God to lighten unto us his sixth candelabrum, is it not better to seek the truth in this way than to wander through the labyrinth of worldly ignorance? Furthermore, those who receive this knowledge shall become masters of all arts and crafts. No secret shall be hidden from them, and all good works of the past, present, and future shall be accessible to them. The whole world shall become as one book, and the contradictions of science and theology shall be reconciled. Rejoice, O humanity, for the time is come when God has decreed that the number of our fraternity shall be increased, a labor that we have joyously undertaken. The doors of wisdom are now open to the world, but only to those who have earned the privilege. May the brothers present themselves, for it is forbidden to reveal our knowledge even to our own children. The right to receive spiritual truth cannot be inherited. It must be evolved within the soul of man himself. Chapter 5. Though we may be accused of indiscretion in offering our treasures so freely and promiscuously, without discriminating between the godly, the wise, the prince, the peasant, we affirm that we have not betrayed our trust. For although we have published our famæ in 5 languages, only those understand it who have that right. Our society is not to be discovered by curiosity seekers, but only by serious and consecrated thinkers. Nevertheless, we have circulated our famæ in 5 mother tongues, so that the righteous of all nations may have an opportunity to know of us, even though they may not be scholars. 1,000 times the unworthy may present themselves and clamor at the gates, but God has forbidden us of the fraternity of RC to hear their voices, and he has surrounded us with his clouds and his protection, so that no harm may come to us, And God has decreed that we, of the order of our seed, can no longer be seen by mortal eyes, unless they have received strength borrowed from the eagle. We further affirm that we shall reform the governments of Europe and pattern them according to the system applied by the philosophers of Damkar. All men desirous of securing knowledge shall receive as much as they are capable of understanding. The rule of false theology shall be overthrown, and God shall make his will known through his chosen philosophers. This is Johann Valentin Andre from a rare print. In certain esoteric circles, there are vague rumors which intimate that the humble personality of Johann Valentin Andre masks an exalted emissary of the Rose Cross. While there is sufficient evidence at hand to establish the actual existence of a German theologian by the name of Andre, there are many discrepancies in his biography which have not been cleared up to the satisfaction of critical investigators. A comparison of the face, shown above with that of Sir Francis Bacon, discloses a striking resemblance, in spite of differences due to age. If Lord Bacon borrowed his name and identity of William Shakespeare, he could also assume, after his mock funeral in England, the personality of Johann Valentin Andre. The crescent below the bust is significant. It also appears on the crest of Lord Bacon to denote that he was the second son of Sir Nicholas Bacon. Further, the four letters O, MDC, in the lower frame at the lower right corner of the plate is a very simple Baconian cipher. Can be changed into number whose sum gives 33, the numerical equivalent of the name Bacon. These several points of interest, when considered together, go far towards clearing up the mystery surrounding the authorship of the first Rosicrucian manifestos. It could be a relative. Chapter 7. Because of the need of brevity, it is enough to say that our father, CRC, was born in the year 1378 and departed at the age of 106, leaving to us the labor of spreading thy doctrine of philosophic religion to the entire world. Our fraternity is open to all who sincerely seek the truth, but we publicly warn the false and impious that they cannot betray or injure us, for God has protected our fraternity, and all who seek to do it harm shall have their evil designs return and destroy them, while the treasures of our fraternity shall remain untouched, to be used by the lion in the establishment of his kingdom. Do we got 2 sevens? I guess this is supposed to be 8. We declare that God, before the end of the world, shall create a great flood of spiritual light to alleviate the suffering of humankind. Falsehood and darkness, which have crept into the arts, sciences, religions, and governments of humanity, making it difficult for even the wise to discover the path of reality, shall be forever removed, and a single standard established, so that all may enjoy the fruitage of truth. We shall not be recognized as those responsible for this change, for people shall say that it is the result of the progressiveness of the age. Great are the reforms about to take place, but we, of the fraternity of R.C., do not arrogate ourselves to the glory for this divine reformation, since many there are, not members of our fraternity, but honest, true, and wise men, who by their intelligence and their writings shall hasten its coming. We testify that sooner the stones shall rise up and offer their services than that there shall be any lack of righteous person to execute the will of God on earth. Chapter 9. That no one may doubt, we declare that God has sent messengers and signs in the heavens, that in the new stars in Serpentarius and Cygnus, to show that a great council of the elect is to take place. This proves that God reveals in visible nature, for the discerning few, signs and symbols of all things that are coming to pass. God has given man 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, but only 1 tongue. Whereas the eyes, the nostrils, and the ears emit the wisdom of nature into the mind, the tongue alone may give it forth. In various ages there have been illumined ones, who have seen, smelled, tasted, or heard the will of God, but it will shortly come to pass that those who have Those who have seen, smelt, tasted, or heard shall speak, and truth shall be revealed. Before this revelation of righteousness is possible, however, the world must sleep away the intoxication of her poisoned chalice, filled with the false life of the theological vine, and opening her heart to virtue and understanding, welcoming the rising sun of truth. I agree with that in great detail. If you are not familiar with me, I have an unconventional Bible study. It is linked up here. And the theological false vine is indeed falling away, not just from me, but from various other people. It is becoming more prevalent. Chapter 10. We have a magic writing, copied from that divine alphabet with which God writes his will upon the face of celestial and terrestrial nature. With this new language, we read God's will for all his creatures, and just as astronomers predict eclipses, so we prognosticate the obscurations of the church and how long they shall last. Our language is like unto that of Adam and Enoch before the fall, and though we understand and can explain our mysteries in this our sacred language, we cannot do so in Latin, a tongue contaminated by the confusion of Babylon. Chapter 11. We cannot do so in Latin, a tongue contaminated by the confusion of Babylon. That's interesting. Our language is like to that of Adam and Enoch before the fall. Prove that. And though we can understand and explain our mysteries in this sacred language, we cannot do so in Latin. That is wild. That is wild. Chapter 11. Although there are still certain powerful persons who oppose and hinder us, because of which we must remain concealed, we exhort those who would become of our fraternity to study unceasingly these sacred scriptures, for such as do this cannot be far from us. We do not mean that the Bible should be continually in the mouth of man, but that he should search for its true and eternal meaning, which is seldom discovered by theologians, scientists, or mathematicians, because they are blinded by the opinions of their sect. You have to take off those glasses that we talk about in the Bible study in order to understand exactly what is going on, and it is not what you have been taught. We bear witness that ever since the beginning of the world has there been given to man a more excellent book than the Holy Bible. I disagree. Blessed is he who possesses it. More blessed is he who reads it. More blessed is he who understands it. And most godlike he who obeys it. It depends on which parts you are obeying, because there are some parts that if you obey the will of God, you will probably be condemned to hell, according to their own theology, not mine. I don't believe in hell. Chapter 12. We wish the statements made in the Fama Fraternatus concerning the transmutation of metals and universal medicine to be lightly understood. While we realize that both these works are attainable by man, we fear that many really great minds may be led away from the true quest of knowledge and understanding if they permit themselves to limit their investigation to the transmutation of metals. When a man is given power to heal disease, to overcome poverty, and to reach a position of worldly dignity, that man is beset by numerous temptations, and unless he possess true knowledge and full understanding, he will become a terrible menace to mankind. The alchemist who attains to the art of transmuting base metals can do all manner of evil, unless his understanding be as great as his self-created wealth. We therefore affirm that man must first gain knowledge, virtue, and understanding. Then all the other things may be added unto him. We accuse the Christian Church of the great sin of possessing power and using it unwisely. Therefore we prophesy that it shall fall by the weight of its own iniquities, and its crown shall be brought to naught. Chapter 13. In concluding our Confessio, we earnestly admonish you to cast aside the worthless books of pseudo-alchemists and philosophers, of whom there are many in our age, who make light of the Holy Trinity, and deceive the credulous with meaningless enigmas. One of the greatest of these is a stage player, a man with sufficient ingenuity for imposition. Such men are mingled by the enemy of human welfare among those who seek to do good, thus making truth more difficult of a discovery. Believe us, the truth is simple and unconcealed, while falsehood is complex, deeply hidden, proud, and fictitiously worldly knowledge, seemingly a glitter with godly luster, is often mistaken for divine wisdom. You that are wise will turn from these false teachings and come to us, who seek not your money, but freely offer you our greater treasure. We desire not your goods, but that you should become partakers of our goods. We do not deride parables, but invite you to understand all parables and all secrets. We do not ask you to receive us, but invite you to come into our kingly houses and palaces, not because of ourselves, but because we are so ordered by the Spirit of God, the desire of our most excellent Father, CRC, and the need of the present moment, which is very great. This is a symbolic diagram of the operations of nature from Flood's Collectio Operum. And I am going to grab that for the thumbnail, and we will scroll down and look at it briefly. I see Elementium, the Aquae, the Terre, which is water of earth, Aquae Liberations, Mineralia, vegetable, animal. So this is the different kingdom divisions. I may or may not agree with them. How many have they got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That sounds right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is not. Hey. This plate, engraved by Debray, is the most famous of the diagrams illustrating the philosophic principles of Robert Flood, Robertus de Fluctibus. 3 figures are outstanding links between Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry: Michael Meyer, Elias Ashmole, and Robert Flood. De Quincey considers Robert Flood to be the immediate father of Freemasonry. See the Rosicrucians and Freemasons. Edward White considers Robert Flood as secondary to none of the disciples of Paracelsus, even going so far as to declare that Flood far surpassed his master. He further adds, the central figure of Rosicrucian literature, towering as an intellectual giant above the crowd of sophileurs, theosophists, and charlatanic professors of the magnum opus, who, directly or otherwise, were connected with the mysterious brotherhood, is Robertus de Fluctibus, the great English mystical philosopher of the 17th century, a man of immense erudition, of exalted mind, and, to judge by his writings, of extreme personal sanctity. See the real history of the Rosicrucians. Robert Flood was born in 1574 and died in 1637. The Debray diagram shown above is almost self-explanatory. Outside the circle of the starry heavens are the 3 fiery rings of the Imperium. That's good. The triple fire of the Supreme Creator, in which dwell the celestial creatures. Within of the stars are the circles of the planets and the elements. After the element of air comes the circle of the world, Earth. The circle of animals is followed by the circle of plants, which is in turn followed by the circle of minerals. Then come various industries. And in the center is a terrestrial globe with an ape-man sitting upon it, measuring a sphere with a pair of compasses. This little figure represents the animal creation. In the outer ring of fire above is the sacred name of Jehovah, surrounded by clouds. From these clouds issues a man, holding a chain. Between the divine sphere and the lower world, personified by the ape, is the figure of a woman. It is to be specially noted that the female figure is merely holding the chain connecting her with the lower world, but the chain connecting her with the higher world ends in a shackle about her wrist. This female figure is capable of several interpretations. She may represent humanity, suspended between divinity and the beast. She may represent nature as the link between God and the lower world, or she may represent the human soul, the common denominator between the superior and the inferior. Chapter 14. Now that we have made our position clear, that we sincerely confess Christ, disavow the papacy, devote our lives to true philosophy and worthy living, and daily invite and admit into our fraternity the worthy of all nations, who thereafter share with us the light of God, will you not join yourselves with us to the perfection of yourselves? the development of all the arts, and the service of the world? If you will take this step, the treasures of every part of the earth shall be at one time given unto you, and the darkness which envelopes the human knowledge, and which results in the vanities of material arts and sciences, shall be forever dispelled. This is chapter 15. Again, we warn against those who are dazzled by the glitter of gold, or those who, now upright, might be turned by the great riches to a life of idleness and pomp, not to disturb our sacred silence with their clamorings. For though there be a medicine which will cure all diseases and give unto men all wisdom, yet it is against the will of God that men should attain to understanding by any means other than virtue, labor, and integrity. We are not permitted to manifest ourselves to any man, except it be by the will of God. Those who believe that they can partake of our spiritual wealth against the will of God or without His sanction will find that they shall sooner lose their lives in seeking us than attain happiness by finding us. Fraternis RC. And that's interesting, right? Now, there are several points of contention for me, but this is their doctrine, so I'm not even really going to dive into it too deep. I do not, for instance, profess Christ. I know that's something for some people. I follow God without an intermediary. I have been divinely revealed to without having to take that step. And so, yes, this last piece goes back to the 8 laws of creation. The motivations by which you do things is extremely important, and greed is definitely not one of the motivators that you should be using. Johann Valentin Andre is generally reputed to be the author of the Confessio. It is a much mooted question, however, whether Andre did not permit his name to be used as a pseudonym by Sir Francis Bacon. Apropos of this subject are 2 extremely significant references occurring in the introduction to that remarkable potpourri. The Anatomy of Melancholy. This volume first appeared in 1621 from the pen of Democritus Jr., who was afterwards identified as Robert Burton, who in turn was a suspected and intimate of Sir Francis Bacon. One reference archly suggests that at the time of publishing the Anatomy of Melancholy in 1621, the founder of the Fraternity of R.C. was still alive. This statement, concealed from general recognition by its textual involvement, has escaped the notice of most students of Rosicrucianism. In the same work there also appears a short footnote of stupendous import. It contains merely the words Job, Valent, Andreas, Lord Verulam. This single line definitely relates Johann Valentin Andre to Sir Francis Bacon, who was Lord Verulam, and by its punctuation intimates that they are one and the same individual. Prominent among Rosicrucian apologists was John Hayden, who inscribes himself a servant of God and a secretary of nature. In his curious work, The Rosicrucians Uncovered, he gives an enigmatic but valuable description of the fraternity of R.C. in the following language. Now, there are a kind of men, as they themselves report, named Rosicrucians, a divine fraternity that inhabits the suburbs of heaven, and these are the officers of the Generalissimo of the world, that are as the eyes and ears of the great king, seeing and hearing all things. They say these Rosicrucians are seraphatically illuminated, as Moses was, according to this order of the elements. Earth refined the water, water to air, air to fire. He further declares that these mysterious brethren possessed polymorphous powers, appearing in any desired form at will. In the preface to the same work, he enumerates these strange powers of the Rosicrucian adepts. I shall here tell you what the Rosicrucians are, and that Moses was their father, and he was, Greek. Some say they were of the order of Elias, some say the disciples of Ezekiel. For it should seem Rosicrucians were not only initiated into the Mosaical theory, but have arrived also to the power of working miracles, as Moses, Elias, and Ezekiel, and the succeeding prophets did. as being transported where they please, as Habakkuk was from Jewry to Babylon. Or as Philip, after he had baptized the eunuch, to Azotus. And one of these went from me to a friend of mine in Devonshire, and came and brought me an answer to London the same day, which is 4 days' journey. They caught me excellent predictions of astrology and earthquakes. They slacked the plague in cities. They silenced the violent winds and tempests. They calm the rage of the sea and rivers. They walk in the air. They frustrate the malicious aspects of witches. They cure all diseases. I do not dismiss that, but I do not necessarily believe it, right? I don't take anything by blind faith, and I have not seen these things happen. I know, it sounds funny because I have had a vision that told me to do these things. I have had things divinely revealed to me, and I take that as knowledge, right? I take that as my knowledge. You don't have to. But I don't take anybody else's account of it blindly at face value either, so don't take mine. Try the things out that I tell you, and if they don't work, then I'm full of shit. The writings of John Hayden are considered the most important contribution to Rosicrucian literature. John Hayden was probably related to Sir Christopher Hayden, the seraphilically illuminated Rosicrucian, whom the late F. Lee Gardner, Honorable Secretary, Sec. Rose in Anglia, believes to have been the source of his Rosicrucian knowledge. In his Bibliotheca Rosicruciana, he makes the following statement concerning John Hayden. On the whole, from the internal evidence of his writings, he appears to have gone through the lower grade of the R.C. order, and to have given out much of this to the world. John Hayden traveled extensively, visiting Arabia, Egypt, Persia, and the various parts of Europe, as related in a biographical introduction to his work, The Wise Man's Crown, Set with Angels, Planets, Metals, etc., or The Glory of the Rosy Cross, a work declared by him to be a translation into English of the mysterious book M, brought from Arabia by Christian Rosicrucians. Thomas Vaughan, Eugenius Philiathes, another champion of the order, corroborates the statement of John Hayden considering the ability of the Rosicrucian initiates to make themselves invisible at will. The fraternity of R.C. can move in this white mist. Whoever would communicate with us must be able to see in this light, or he will never see unless by our own will. And again, that is something I would have to experience. I don't have any experience with that. I believe in the supernatural. I believe in miracles because I have done some small part, right? I healed myself. I have affected the weather, so I don't dismiss all of the things out of hand, but I have never turned myself invisible. I do not know anyone who has or even claims to have had that is alive today, and so I take it with a grain of salt. It's not that it's not possible. I do believe it's possible. I believe in all kinds of wild-ass things. So, the fraternity of R.C. is an august and sovereign body, arbitrarily manipulating the symbols of alchemy, Kabbalism, astrology, and magic to the attainment of its own peculiar purposes, but entirely independent of the cults whose terminology it employs. The three major objects of the fraternity are: 1. The abolition of all monarchical forms of government and the substitution, therefore, for the rulership of the philosophic elect. The present democracies are a direct outgrowth of Rosicrucian efforts to liberate the Mauls from the domination of despotism. In the early part of the 18th century, the Rosicrucians turned their attention to the new American colonies, then forming the nucleus of a great nation of the New World. The American War of Independence represents their first great political experiment and resulted in the establishment of a national government founded upon the fundamental principles of divine and natural law. As an imperishable reminder of their sub rosa activities, the Rosicrucians left the Great Seal of the United States. Really. The Rosicrucians were also the instigators of the French Revolution, but in this instance were not wholly successful, owing to the fact that the fanaticism of the revolutionists could not be controlled and the reign of terror ensued. Okay, finally we got something to talk about. I do have a little bit of knowledge concerning the formation of this particular country. I do plan on trying to do something like what we're doing here eventually to talk about those type of things, but we're not there yet. the abolition of all monarchical forms of government, and the substitution of the philosophic elect. We lost the monarch here in our great experiment. It is true that a great number of our founding fathers were Masons, not just like initiates, but highly ranking Freemasons. I do not know that there is any record whatsoever of any of them being involved in Rosicrucianism. I'm not entirely sure that Rosicrucianism was actually really a thing at the point in time, and again, I am not initiated into any of these groups. I do not know any of the secret histories. I am learning things as we go along through here, so I am unaware of any records of any of the fathers being, like they are literally records of them joining Masonry, right? George Washington was a Mason. There were several of them. I do not know that any of them were recorded as being Rosicrucian, either by their mouth or by anybody else. And so, I don't know about that. This experiment here is not a democracy. It is a republic, and that is important. That is a important distinction right there. And so this, in part, is incorrect. And if it is recorded incorrect, it is probably incorrect in total. We do not have a democracy, intentionally, by the same people who were part of the group. And so I don't give a whole lot of credence to people who claim that we are a democracy. I understand we use democratic processes, representative forms of government, but it is representing us as Republicans, not the political party, but people who are part of a republic. A republic emphasizes the individual rights. Democracy does not. There is a significant difference between the two. Whether or not they were involved in the dissolution of the colonies and formation of the states, I don't know. I would have to see significant proof to that, right? I would have to see records of them being inducted. I would have to see them talking about being part of it. And like they have pictures of Washington in his vestment, his garment, his what you call the apron. That's what it's called. The Rosicrucians were against those things. We talked about that yesterday, how in their doctrine it was not any special clothing. The Masons do have special clothing, so to be part of the two is a little bit wild. The alchemical androgyne. That's interesting. We have the two-faced Janus here with a snake in one hand and a cup with 3 snake heads in another. We have a tree with a bunch of faces attached to it, an eagle, and he is standing on the moon. From the Turbe Philosorium. The Turbe Philosorium is one of the earliest known documents on alchemy in the Latin tongue. Its exact origin is unknown. It is sometimes referred to as the Third Pythagoreal Synod. As its name implies, it is an assembly of the sages and sets forth the alchemical viewpoints of many of the early Greek philosophers. The symbol, reproduced above, is from a rare edition of the Turbe Philosorium, published in Germany in 1750, and represents, by a hermaphroditic figure, the accomplishment of the magnum opus. The active and passive principles of nature were often depicted by male and female figures, and when the two principles were harmoniously conjoined in any one nature or body, it was customary to symbolize this state of perfect equilibrium by the composite figure shown above. A Rosicrucian title page. From Meyer's Viatorium. Count Michael Meyer, physician to Rudolph II, was an outstanding figure in the Rosicrucian controversy. There is little doubt that he was an initiated member of the Rosicrucian fraternity, empowered by the order to promulgate its secrets among the philosophic elect of Europe. The above title page shows the 7 planets, represented by appropriate figures. Behind the central figure in each case is a smaller emblem, signifying the zodiacal sign in which the planet is enthroned. In the ark, over the title itself, is a portrait of the learned Meyer. The volume of which this is the title page is devoted to an analysis of the nature and effect of the 7 planets, and is couched in alchemical terminology throughout. Michael Meyer concealed his knowledge so cunningly that it is exceedingly difficult to track from his writings the secrets which he possessed. He was profuse in his use of emblems, and the greater part of his philosophical lore is concealed in the engravings which illustrate his books. 2. The Reformation of Science, Philosophy, and Ethics. I'll probably have something to say about this one. The Rosicrucians declared that the material arts and sciences were but a shadow of the divine wisdom, that only by penetrating the innermost recesses of nature could man attain to reality and understanding. Though calling themselves Christians, the Rosicrucians were evidently Platonist and also profoundly versed in the deepest mysteries of the early Hebrew and Hindu theology. There is undeniable evidence that the Rosicrucians desired to re-establish the institutions of the ancient mysteries as the foremost method of instructing humanity in the secret and eternal doctrine. Indeed, being in all probability the perpetuators of the ancient mysteries, the Rosicrucians were able to maintain themselves against the obliterating forces of dogmatic Christianity only by absolute secrecy and the subtlety of their subterfuges. They so carefully guarded and preserved the supreme mystery, the identity and interrelationship of the 3 selves, that no one to whom they did not of their own accord reveal themselves has ever secured any satisfactory information regarding either the existence or the purpose of the order. The fraternity of R.C., through its outer organization, is gradually creating an environment or body in which the illustrious brother, CRC, may ultimately incarnate and consummate for humanity the vast spiritual and material labors of the fraternity. Okay, so that separates me from them. Right? They can profess Christianity. I don't have a problem with that. I do not, because I am on a different tip. It is involved in the Bible study, and we're not going to deal with that today. But they are trying to recreate somebody, right? Ultimately incarnate and consummate for humanity? No. No. No, 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 no. Not a guy. No. You can seize control of things. You can, through what they're talking about here, the 3 selves is the body, mind, and spirit, right? We talk about the Trinity all of the time. You can do that. You don't need to be part of the order for that, and you can disseminate that information without being involved with that. And if you are a secret society with secret goals and secret things, then ultimately incarnating and consummating for humanity the vast spiritual and material labors of the fraternity is beyond your scope. Now, that can be not the physical incarnation of a person, but that is not what is intimidated right here, right? That is not what they are implying. This is like a resurrection to me. I could be wrong, but that's what it sounds like. Creating an environment or body in which the illustrious brother may ultimately incarnate. No, not going to happen. Sorry. Any of it? No. So, the discovery of the universal medicine or panacea for all forms of disease. There is ample evidence that the Rosicrucians were successful in their quest for the elixir of life. Is there really? Is there really ample evidence that they were successful in the quest for an elixir of life? I'm going to read this, but I doubt that highly seriously. In his Theatrum Chemicum Britannicum, Elias Ashmole states that the Rosicrucians were not appreciated in England, but were welcomed on the continent. He also states that Queen Elizabeth was twice cured of the smallpox by the Brethren of the Rosy Cross, and that the Earl of Norfolk was healed of leprosy by a Rosicrucian physician. In the quotations that follow it is hinted by John Hayden that the brothers of the fraternity possessed the secret of prolonging human existence indefinitely, but not beyond the time appointed by the will of God. That is directly contradictory. If you are prolonging human existence indefinitely, but not beyond the time appointed by the will of God, that is directly contradictory. There is no prolonging human existence beyond the will of God at all. So if it is His will that you are not here, then you will not be here. And at last, I have stated before, and I will state again, that seeking mortal eternal life is wrong in every sense and every chance. Every time it pops its head up, it is the wrong doctrine. Anytime anybody is seeking the elixir of life, they are doing things wrong. There are things that you can do through alchemy and through chemicals, right? We do it now. Our medicines that we take now are extending our lives. It is artificially extending our lives, not indefinitely, but for more time than it would naturally be. I believe that that is within the will of God, but I do not believe that the quest for that is necessarily a good thing. I have removed myself from several of those medications because it is not, in my estimation, within the will of God that I take them. Doesn't mean that I won't ever, but so far I have had wonderful results by doing that, by removing that from my life. And so, again, anytime that we are dealing with anybody trying to extend the human life, they are doing it wrong. You're meant to seize this life, live healthily, and some of these things can help you live healthily. But if you are seeking to extend your life in artificial means, you are doing it wrong. That's how we get liches. And at last they could restore by the same course every brother that died to life again. And so continue many ages, the rules you find in the fourth book. See, that's again directly contradictory to the will of God. After this manner began the fraternity of the Rosy Cross, first by 4 persons who died and rose again until Christ. And then they came to worship the star as the star guided them to Bethlehem of Judea. Wow. Where lay our Savior in his mother's arms? And then they opened their treasure and presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. By the commandment of God went home to their habitation. These 4, waxing young again successively many hundreds of years, made a magical language and writing with a large dictionary, which we yet daily use to God's praise and glory, and do find great wisdom therein. Now, whilst Brother C.R. was in the proper womb quickening, they concluded to draw and receive yet others more into their fraternity. Okay, so, I'm going to take extreme exception here. As far as I am aware, there is no documentation whatsoever of the Magi and who they were, right? There is documentation in Matthew, might be Mark, I don't know. They're all the same. There's documentation in there that the Magi came. They saw the sign in the heavens, then they walked and they came. And okay. Now, that sign had to have been there long enough for them to walk from Babylon, which I have talked about in the Bible study, I'm pretty sure, all the way to Bethlehem. But I do not for half a second buy that they were the founders of the Fraternity of the Red Cross and that they had died and rose again. No. I do not discount the fact that people can, right? We just don't have a record of it. Ezekiel did things, and Isaiah, I believe, did some things too. Jesus called a couple of people back to life, including himself. So I do not discount entirely the ability for that to happen. CPR can make that happen, right? But the fact that there were 4 of them and that those 4 are the ones who founded the Rosy Cross, I just do not buy that for a second. And that I don't have any evidence against it. I just don't have any evidence for it. Like zero. As far as I know, we don't even know the names of the Magi. How do you know that they rose from the dead? Because somebody wrote a book a couple thousand years later and was like, hey, look, I think this thing. No, doesn't work that way. That's how we wound up with the Pentateuch. Somebody decided a few thousand years after the events to write some things down that may or may not be true, taking from many different cultures, many different stories, and assimilating them to a culture that did not originate them. Go back and watch the Bible study. The womb, herein referred to, was apparently a glass casket or container in which the brothers were buried. This was also called the philosophical egg. After a certain period of time, the philosopher, breaking the shell of his egg, came forth and functioned for a prescribed period, after which he retired again into his shell of glass. The Rosicrucian medicine for the healing of all human infirmities may be interpreted either as a chemical substance which produces the physical effects described as, or as a spiritual understanding. The true healing power which, when a man has partaken of it, reveals truth to him. Ignorance is the worst form of disease, and that which heals ignorance is therefore the most potent of all medicines. The perfect Rosicrucian medicine was for the healing of nations, races, and individuals. In an early, unpublished manuscript, an unknown philosopher declares alchemy, Kabbalism, astrology, and magic to have been divine sciences originally, but that through perversion they had become false doctrines, leading seekers after wisdom even farther from their goal. The same author gives a valuable key to esoteric Rosicrucianism by dividing the path of spiritual attainment into 3 steps or schools, which he calls mountains. The first and lowest of these mountains is Mount Sophia, the second Mount Kabbalah, and the third Mount Magica. These 3 mountains are sequential stages of spiritual growth. The unknown author then states, by philosophy is to be understood the knowledge of the workings of nature, by which knowledge man learns to climb to those higher mountains above the limitations of sense. By Kabbalism is to be understood the language of the angelic or celestial beings, and he who masters it is able to converse with the messengers of God. On the highest of the mountains is the school of Magia, divine magic, which is the language of God, wherein man is taught the true nature of all things by God himself. I skipped the first 2, I guess. There is a growing conviction that if the true nature of Rosicrucians were divulged, it would cause consternation, to say the least. Rosicrucian symbols have many meanings, but the Rosicrucian meaning has not yet been revealed. The mound on which stands the house of the Rosy Cross is still concealed by clouds, in which the brethren hide themselves and their secrets. Michael Meyer writes, what is contained in the Fama and Confessio is true. It is a very childish objection that the brotherhood have promised so much and performed so little. With them, as elsewhere, many are called but few are chosen. The masters of the order hold out the rose as the remote prize, but they impose the cross on those who are entering. See Silentium Post Clamores by Meyer, and The Rosicrucians and the Freemasons by De Quincey. The rose and the cross appear on the stained glass windows of Lichfield Chapter House, where Walter Conrad Arsenberg believes Lord Bacon and his mother to have been buried. A crucified rose within a heart is a watermark into the dedication of the 1628 edition of Robert Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy. The fundamental symbols of the Rosicrucians were the rose and the cross, the rose female and the cross male, both universal phallic emblems, because, women are, the female rose is absolutely a phallic symbol. While such learned gentlemen as Thomas Inman, Hargrave Jennings, and Richard Payne Knight have truly observed that the rose and cross typify the generative processes. These scholars seem unable to pierce the veil of symbolism. They do not realize that the creative mystery in the material world is merely a shadow of the divine creative mystery in the spiritual world. Because of the phallic significance of their symbols, both the Rosicrucians and the Templars have been falsely accused of practicing obscene rites in their secret ceremonials. While it is true that the alchemical retort symbolizes the womb, it also has a far more significant meaning concealed under the allegory of the second birth. As generation is the key to material existence, it is natural that the fraternity of R.C. should adopt as its characteristic symbols those exemplifying the reproductive processes. As regeneration is the key to spiritual existence, they, therefore, founded their symbolism upon the rose and the cross, which typify the redemption of man through the union of his lower temporal nature with his higher eternal nature. The Rosy Cross is also a hieroglyphic figure representing the formula of the universal medicine. And the final image here, the elementary world, once again represented from Museum Hermeticum Reformatum et Apophaticum. The outer circle contains the figures of the zodiac, the second their signs and that part of the human body which they rule, the third the months of the year with brief notes concerning temperaments, etc. The fourth circle contains the elements accompanied by their appropriate symbols, and the following 7 circles mark the orbits of the planets, also the planetary angels, the 7 major members of the universal man, and the 7 metals, each division appearing under its appropriate element according to the elemental names in the 4th circle. In the 12th circle appear the words. There are 3 principles, 3 worlds, 3 ages, and 3 kingdoms. In the 13th circle appear the names of the 12 arts and sciences which are considered essential to spiritual growth. In the 14th circle is the word nature. The 15th circle contains the following words. It is the great honor of faithful souls that from their very birth an angel is appointed to preserve and keep each of them. See First English Translation, London, 1893. And next we will be doing 15 Rosicrucian and Kabbalistic diagrams, which I probably will not have a whole lot to talk about either. I didn't have a lot to expound upon in this one because there is not a lot outside of historical knowledge, right? Like the things that we think is true about these people. We do not have a whole lot of writings of people claiming to be Rosicrucians, as far as I'm aware. We do not have historical data for some of the things intimated in here. Bacon could have been Andre. I don't know. I can't make the argument for or against, but it is entirely possible that that was a cousin or an uncle or whatever. There's a lot of assumptions in here, and most of them are based upon the wrong thing. And so it is most likely that the entirety is wrong. That doesn't mean that it is. It does seem that it is not necessarily aligned correctly, closer than most of the other ones get, but not quite in the right way. Right? They're still focusing on the intermediary, and part of that was having to hide. I understand that. But within yourself, you should be able to separate the true from the fake. And there's a lot fake in that particular book. Most of the first 5 books, for instance, were taken from someone else. The flood story of Noah is recorded by the Sumerians with the same names. Most of them, anyway. The story is a little bit different. You judge for yourself which one is the truth. Go back and look at the Sumerian flood story. We've talked about it. Go back and look at the various points in history intimated here. And again, it is easy to say this group is responsible for a thing when they have not taken any credit for it, and there's nobody to pin the blame on, and there is like none of the data points line up. I'm sure that there was a group. They may have even done these things, but there is no way to prove so. I do believe in some extremely unconventional things. I believe in magic. I believe in the electromagnetic manipulation of forces, right? That is the magic that I talk about. I have done that for myself. I have removed, through the grace of God, absolutely, the cyst that was in my throat that did not allow me to talk for more than 15 minutes at a time, and then in a very much higher voice. Right, I had to modulate it down using the microphone before. This is much closer to my natural voice. I can talk for an hour easily. I believe in some wild things. I have seen things outside of myself. I have what's called aphantasia. I cannot willfully close my eyes and imagine anything. I have, here in the last week, been given a key that is seeming to unlock that a little bit, but I don't have any control over it. I can see something, but I don't have any control of it now, and that's a little bit wild, but we're getting places that we haven't been before. So I can't give that a key away because I have not fully mastered it. I am trying to dispense wisdom as we go along. I am trying to sort through these various things. Some things I know about, some things I don't, and I try to talk about the ones that I do and not talk about the ones that I don't, and so I did not have too much to add to this. I don't know that I'll have a whole lot to add to the diagrams. We will see what is there, but the numbers 1, 3, and 8 are important. We get 3 a lot in here. We didn't get a whole lot of the 1. We got a few examples of the 7, which leads into 8. But again, there's not a whole lot for me to expound upon, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment, not too much confusion, to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and that I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those beliefs. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it. If you would like to know more about my unconventional beliefs, they are expounded in these various playlists. Check them out. See what I'm talking about. See where I'm coming from. There are things that I talk about in there that you can do. You just have to have the discipline to do it. Fasting, prayer, and meditation are the keys. Take it directly to God with no intermediary necessary. You do not have to join any secret group. I have been initiated into one, but as far as I know, I'm the only one, and so that is a thing. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. And if you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Tape. Peace.